This episode of The Unstarving Musician is sponsored by Liner Notes. Learn from the hundreds of musicians and industry pros I've spoken with for The Unstarving Musician on topics such as marketing, songwriting, touring, sync licensing, and much more. Sign up for Liner Notes. Liner Notes is an email newsletter from yours truly in which I share some of the best knowledge gems garnered from the many conversations featured on The Unstarving Musician. You'll also be privy to the latest podcast episodes and Liner Notes subscriber exclusives. Sign up at unstarvingmusician.com. It's free and you can unsubscribe at any time. This is The Unstarving Musician. I'm Rabanzo. This is my podcast. It features conversations with independent music artists and industry professionals with occasional special topic episodes featuring yours truly. A glimpse into the minds of my varied guests, all intended to help independent music artists better understand the marketing, business, and creative processes that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. Welcome to another episode. I am so stoked to be in your earbuds or on your speakers today. Where are you? Where are you listening? What are you wearing when you listen? Nobody ever responds to that question. I really want to know. I really think about this as I have a big smile on my face. So, I'm officially on a holiday schedule with the podcast. I apologize that you didn't get an episode last week for those of you that wait so patiently. But I'll be dropping an episode about every 2 weeks during the holiday season, which began for me early this month with Dia de Muertos. Those of you who listen regularly probably know I live in Querétaro, Mexico, hence the Dia de Muertos. It also began with the Querétaro Blues Festival, which I performed with Johnny Bergen, and he is currently visiting from the U.S. We've been doing a number of shows, and do our last one this evening as I record. Doing it at a small club. It was kind of a secret thing until a couple days ago, letting the festival pass by before we promoted it. And various other music projects that I have going on are making this holiday schedule what it is. It's been a little whirlwind over the past few weeks for me. In this episode, I speak with Chris Raspante and Jesse Spradlin of the Vintage Yell. Now, Chris has appeared on the podcast a couple of times before. He was actually in episode 2 and episode 186. Those episodes have been among the most popular with the podcast, so I have high hopes for this one too. So this is his third appearance, but this time with bandmate Jesse Spradlin, and I really normally don't like interviewing more than one person at a time, but they were super cool and we're at the same place. That I can handle. And for those of you who've never edited a podcast, you probably have no idea why it's such a big deal for me. But yes, so Chris and Jesse have this newish band called The Vintage Yell, and they have a lot of new music coming our way. They have a new single out already called Goin On Swinging, and you can hear it at thevintageyell.com and all the digital music services. But check out their website to find out when their even newer stuff, their forthcoming stuff happens. This was a really great conversation. I think I most enjoyed their discussion of the launch party and their coming out by design, so to speak, the way they did it. I think that's really good stuff. I believe you're going to appreciate it a lot. So we talk about their working together as a new band, writing and recording new music, release strategy, their relationship with Mesquite Street Records, creating and marketing a launch party, the very one that I mentioned, and a whole lot more. We got a little silly at times, but great conversation. On a side note, Chris was responsible for bringing to life my two singles, On Top of the World and New Gods Part 2. He performed, mixed, and mastered both songs. He is indeed a talented guy, as is his bandmate, Jesse Spradlin. You're going to dig their music. Okay, that's it, man. Let's do this. Here is me talking with Chris and Jesse of The Vintage Yell. I gather you weren't born in Texas. When did you end up there?
Yes, no, I was actually born in Virginia. I lived in Texas when I was younger for about 7 years, and then I moved back to Texas after college in 2017.
Where do you feel like you grew up then, Texas?
I kind of grew up a little bit all over. I lived in New Orleans, Savannah, Georgia, Texas, and then I call my hometown Gretna, Virginia. So that's where I call home.
What's that town like?
Oh, 1,200 people, one stoplight. We don't have any Walmarts, but we have a store called Food Lion, and that's pretty much the hip hop in his place in town because it's open till 11. So lots of rural, mountains in Virginia. It was where I feel like I really honed or started to hone songwriting, just because it was so beautiful and inspiring.
And who was your Hall of Fame blues dad?
So his name was Landon Spradlin. He was born in New Orleans, grew up in Virginia, and fell in love with guitar when he was about 8 years old. I don't even know how that happened, but somebody gave him the award. So, but he was a great like blues, gospel singer, songwriter, and guitarist.
Nice. Did he record anything that I might be able to find someday?
Oh yes, he recorded an album called No More Blue Mondays. He actually had Eric Clapton's bass player and drummer on there. Do not ask me their names. I don't know which ones, but I think he recorded that in England or something. But yeah, it was like number one on like blues like .net for like a decade. So yeah, that's probably his most well-known album.
Very nice. I will look for that. And which one indeed regarding Eric Clapton bass players and drummers?
Yeah.
Chris, tell me about working with Jesse in the studio for the first time.
Yeah, we met a guy here in Arlington named Jack Watkins, hooked us up and told each of us like separately, like, hey, do you know, and it's like, I think you really need to meet. So we met that way, and I started working with her, working on her solo stuff. The first time it was a like EP that was already mostly recorded. And so I just did like some overdubs and then I think mixed it. And then after that, it worked out so well. I reached out to her again and was like, do you have any more songs? And of course she was like, yeah. And so I was like, let's go ahead and finish, let's make this a final record. So we did like 4 or 5 more songs to make it like a, 10, 11, 12 track. So we did that, and that was really cool and fun, and we worked really well together. And so a little bit after that, I was wanting to kind of change musically what I was doing and kind of where I was at. So I reached out to her, and I think it was a text, and just said, I think in the new year, I'm going to start a new band, and I think you would be great. And I totally thought she was going to text back and just be like, oh, you're so sweet, but, I'm doing my solo thing. And, so, thanks, but no thanks. And she texted back like, yes, totally, I'm in. And that started it all.
Jesse, I can guess some of the things, but what for you personally made you decide to say, yes, this was a good thing to work with Chris in a band, put a band together?
Well, when Chris offered to work with me on some more songs to like make my album like a full record, I think it was one of the first musical experiences I had where I guess you could say you have like musical chemistry with the person. I think I have some of that with like my family. They're all very musical, and that was, really instinctive. But Chris and I just really worked well together. And I think that working with him made me pulled out some things in me that like it challenged me. I think it made me be a better version of myself as an artist. And I loved working with him. He's so professional and so talented, and we get along and both have wonderful personalities.
Definitely handsome.
We laugh a lot. He likes coffee. That's a plus. So I think that where he was musically and professionally, I wanted to strive to be on another level and, surpass just like a local musician level. And also like creatively, it was really cool to work with a person that you felt like brought out some new things in you and helped like polish you and maybe vice versa for Chris. I'm sure we both bring out things in each other, but also just as a solo artist, it is not easy to always put a band together. And I really like playing in a band, and with Chris, we just, it leveled me up personally, like from just like a singer songwriter to like, okay, we're now like a performing act, not just, solo singer songwriter. So I think it's a lot of things creatively, professionally challenging, and it was just fun. It had a great time performing and hanging out with them, and I was like, heck yeah, I want to do that more.
Well, I know from what I know of Chris, he has that effect on people, in that he can easily draw people toward him based on his talents and personality without much trying. And I'm glad to hear, Chris, from what I know about you, that you're doing some original music, and glad that you guys hooked up. I've listened only to a little bit of your music. I listened to Burnin' Letters today. I don't know which of these are released yet. Maybe you can tell me that. And I listened to Can't Help But Love You and Close My Eyes. And is Notch Down going to be the name of an album? The album?
No.
Okay.
That those are just notes from
Audio
mastering.
notes.
Yeah. And they're just in alphabetical order, so that's why you heard those first three.
Well, they sound good. They sound good.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
How many singles have you released thus far?
We've released one, Goin On Swinging,
yeah,
which is in there as well. But that's the very first song that we wrote together, and we recorded it way early on, like the very beginning of this year, and put it out ourselves. And that just like got the ball rolling. And then we, went back and recorded and wrote together and did the rest of the songs, which there's, a few that we wrote together. And then there was some where they were her songs, from being solo, and some of my songs from being solo. And we just kind of put them together and put the vintage yell on them and made it a full 12-track album. And we're going to do 2 EPs, and we're going to start releasing singles officially in the new year, starting in January. So it'll be like release a couple of singles and then the first EP, and then release a couple more singles and then release the second EP. So there'll be 6 songs on each. So that's
cool.
Yeah. So we're basically, this year was kind of like, because we truly didn't start being a band until this year. We kind of decided to do it at the end of 22, but we didn't start doing things until this year. So it's really been kind of a whirlwind as of October, having 12 songs, recorded, mixed, mastered, just sitting there ready to go. Yeah, so we're just kind of getting our ducks in a row for all the promo stuff, and going to be shooting some videos and photos in November, and we're ready to start off 2024 kicking and screaming.
Yeah.
Nice. I like the strategy. I'm sure you're not, maybe you are, but I'm sure you're not the first to do it. But I like the singles EP instead of doing the full album at once. It seems the attention economy and music economy is conducive to doing it that way, or it's good. It's a good way to do it in today's climate.
Yeah,
I
had been told by so many people that they were saying like people don't really ingest music like they used to, as far as like all in one album, like in the past. And so like 5 and 6 song EPs are much better. And sometimes people just release singles,
Mm-hmm.
So we knew we were pretty much going to do that from the get-go. So once we decided that, but we did know that as things developed and we signed our record deal, the label really wanted to do vinyl and I guess also CDs. So then we knew that eventually it would come out as an entire collection of songs. So we did kind of think of that at some point, but really so far, a lot of it is like thinking of them as like 2 groups, 2 collections of songs, and it'll be EP1 and EP2, and each one will have 6 songs on it, and we'll release about 2 or 3 singles, per EP. And that just seems to be how people, like to take their music these days.
I think especially as like a newer band, it's kind of easier to get people to listen to an EP than listen to a full 12-song album.
Right. I think it's a good strategy. It's so weird. I was just going to interject that I spoke with this gal named Susan Rogers, who has a rich history as an engineer, a producer, and she's gone into, I guess, like neuroscience. So she's been studying how music impacts people differently. And we had a really fascinating conversation, but the one thing that she said she's a little still trying to wrap her head around and figure out is the different ways in which people consume music. Like Chris, you had pointed out that people don't sit and listen to a whole album anymore, and probably maybe both of you, I don't know how old you are, Jesse, but I'm guessing, Chris, you remember sort of sitting down to listen to music, and it was sort of a thing you did. You sat and listened to music and just marveled at it if you liked it. And now if you think about it, as Susan Rogers was telling me, it's so true. It's like it's something we listen to when we're doing something else for the most part.
Yeah, I think,
True.
Luckily with vinyl, it seems to be the final frontier, or at least, the final thing that's holding on, that's like a physical thing that you buy, and that will sit down or be somewhere, stationary, and put the music on and hear it, somewhat all together. But otherwise, yeah, probably 90 something% of the time, especially when CDs kind of went the way of the dodo, that kind of put the nail on that coffin, as far as like, people moving on to just, you're these days you're going to be in your car, or, somehow with your phone listening, and it's going to be very song at a time kind of stuff, or, Spotify playlists. And it's just the way we've evolved, musically, is that we don't, lives are so much faster, and a lot of people just don't have time to sit there and listen to a whole album all the way through. And I think, coming from the older generation, we can kind of try to rail against that, or we can just, accept that and kind of, adapt to that, because it's like it or not, that's just how people operate these days. So, but there was also a time back in the day, I guess it was probably in the 50s or so, maybe early 60s, that was a much more single oriented time. Artists usually put out singles before they would put out a full album. So I think you could maybe say that it's not the times changing, it's actually the times coming around, making a circle and coming back to that. So who knows if it's going to change again? Probably will, but at least for now, that's what we're dealing with. And I mean, I'm okay with that. There's pluses and minuses to that, and we're just rolling with it.
I think that's what you got to do. And I, it does make me a little sad, but I certainly don't, when I talk about it, I certainly don't want anyone to get the impression that I'm, somehow resigned in the sadness. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, front yard.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm part of it too. I mean, frankly, all we have is time, in my opinion, but we're just so distracted, and there's so many forms of entertainment, and that's been building for 2 decades at least. And there's just so much to do. And there's so many people, and there's so much music. Creating music is so accessible now. There's so much out there, and it's just different, like you said. And yeah, it is curious and fun to think about that pop music started as a singles economy, and then I guess the 60s and 70s sort of brought us the advent of the LP. And yeah, and vinyl today, I'm really excited at some of the things. Obviously, plain black vinyl is great, to just sit down and listen to. But some of the beautiful art that's coming back into the vinyl world, including the vinyl itself, seems to be increasing in popularity. How did you guys get hooked up with Mesquite Street Records, and how's that going?
They reached out to us. We did a
like a showcase.
Yeah,
concert.
It was like showcase / really just a like free concert. Thank you, fans. So far. Although we were pretty new.
It was kind of like our version of a band launch party.
Yeah, like a coming out party kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so we played, we did it here in DFW, and they were there. And I think literally the next day, I got a call from Victor, who is one of the two principals of the label. And he just flat out asked, he was like, how would y'all like to do something with Mesquite Street? And I was like, let's talk. So we did, and a couple months later we inked the deal. They were the ones that really pushed the vinyl, because we were not thinking vinyl at all, and they were like, no, that's one of the things we do.
Yeah, we wanted to, we know how much it costs.
Yeah.
So
how long it took to get it back.
Yeah, so we were trying to compare and contrast, like what is going to be worth it for us as a new band. Will people buy our vinyl? Will people care about our vinyl? So we were weighing that option. So, but ultimately ended up wanting to do it because they just love vinyl.
Yeah,
So,
they're big fans. Victor especially, and Alan Pesci.
Just music fans in general. Yeah.
That's what's so great about being on the label is that they're super music fans, and they want that above everything else. Just the music to be great, and for us to do well. They're very much audiophiles, and so Victor definitely was like, "You're making vinyl," and we were like, "Yes, sir." And yeah, but then researching other stuff, it was like, you know what? Yeah, it is smart to do because it is one thing that you, as a band, especially as a live touring band, getting out there, that is something that fans will buy and want to buy. So again, it was just like, okay, you've convinced us. So yeah, so we're excited about that.
Alan Pesci is a name I recall. He kind of goes back in the sort of label business, doesn't he? Did he have?
Yeah,
he
he
had
was.
something.
He started off in a band called the Penguins, which is kind of a.
Was it 70s power pop?
Yeah, it's like they started like mid to late 70s and went into the 80s. They're kind of cult heroes here in DFW from way back in the day. He started off as a musician and has got other businesses and stuff that he does for a living, but he's always remained a music fan and has been really great as far as helping support local musicians, especially Arlington musicians, and has a studio that we work out of quite a bit, and just overall very supportive. And he and Victor, I guess you'd say, run or spearhead the label. And yeah, so it's we're totally happy. It's been a really good deal.
Yeah, it's funny. I probably have heard that story before about the Penguins. They were still doing the Penguins thing when I started playing, clubs in like Arlington. And I'm sure I saw them at least a couple times, but I didn't know the guys. But I remember his name mostly probably from Lanny Flower conversations with Lanny Flowers.
Yeah, Lanny was the lead singer in that band.
Oh, that's so funny. I've forgotten that too. Yeah, and I didn't know Lanny back then. It's funny. He came, Neil, our mutual friend Neil, and Brandon, and another guy whose name I forget, came to San Francisco when Sammy and I were living there, and we went to see them play at one of those pop, I forgot what it was called, like pop festival thing.
Yeah.
And Neil and Alan Davis were having to like sort of tell me the history of Lanny. Like, I mean, I was around him probably fairly often, but I just did not know him, and had only seen them a couple of times in the day. But yeah, it's so funny. That's cool. It sounds, from what I have gathered in the past, Alan is a good guy to work with. How did you two go about? Talk to me about sort of creating the inception of and the promoting of your launch party. What did you do? What worked? What would you do differently, if anything? Like if bands listening or musicians listening were like, I've been thinking of doing this but haven't done it before.
Well, every good idea starts at a coffee shop. So we were kind of trying to come up with ideas, and I think it was in March we had just put out our first single, and we were just we were thinking of what could we do. We weren't even really thinking of having a party, but in our conversation we just were like, what if we just have like basically like a launch party, like a coming out party, like we just plan like a whole event. And we created, well, first of all, we decided kind of what that event was going to be. We decided we wanted to basically have a venue that was in our control, like not something that like is inside of a restaurant or inside of another bar. And then we wanted to have someone open for us. We were like, let's just put on a real awesome, like professional shows, lights, camera, action, and kind of just show everybody this is what the Vintage Yell is going to be. I mean, that includes everything from, getting our set list together full band when we had only released one single in March and the party was in the middle of or beginning of June. So having to build a full band set list with cool transitions that feel like a real quality concert, finding someone that would open for us, creating a budget for what we wanted to spend, as far as we wanted to pay our musicians, but we also wanted it to be a free concert. We wanted to pay for for a bar, or like for, someone to come there and serve drinks. We wanted to have a budget for little snacks that we could bring. We wanted to have a small budget for decor, sticking to that budget and, being diligent as to how to raise that money. We did this all in like less than 2 months, just coming up with this idea and making it happen. I guess like we had April, May, and then beginning of June. Then to things like the audio, like Chris is such an engineer and, audio expertise guy, that we spent several hours preparing the venue and, making sure that everything's connected right and that it's prepared for like somebody to come run sound, hiring a sound person to go do it. We had somebody run lights for us. We had some photographers come. So it was like, I think in that party, we kind of shot for the stars, and whether it was, oblivious or ambitious, we didn't stop to think about. We were like, we're just going to shoot for it and then see what happens. And it ended up being a really good show with like a packed out house. And if I do say so myself, we killed it.
Yeah. No, it was a really good show. One kind of recurring theme with the band so far, and it exhausts us and it also gets stuff done, is that we tend to come up with an idea and then make this goal to do just various things along the way. And it's almost always something that is like way too ambitious or way too quick, to get done. And then we just like kill ourselves to get it done, which probably, much to the dismay of everybody around us. But it's really how we've done a lot of stuff where, you're just sitting around and it's like, you know what, we should throw a party and let's have a free concert and blah, 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 all that. Like, oh, okay. And we just kind of run with it. And next thing you know, it's like a month later it's happening. And the cool thing though, is that we tend to get these things done. I think so far, knock on wood, we hadn't had one just totally go bust yet. But when you look back on it, it's always like a cool, like, man, I cannot believe we pulled that off. But it's kind of like we don't overanalyze it too much and don't like start second guessing, because then we probably wouldn't do it. You just kind of go, yeah, that'd be a cool idea. Okay, let's do it. And then you just start working on it. And that was the way that concert was. And the record and a whole bunch of other stuff was that way. The promoting, we basically, we did what most people. Yeah, it was like word of mouth and online. We just tried to blanket, Instagram and Facebook. We didn't do any of the whole like sponsored thing, where you pay. It was truly just like the fans that we had, or the friends that, followers that we had so far. It was just like put it out there and then told everybody, just verbally that we knew, like, hey, come on out. And yeah, it was a really great night. It's still one of our better shows, I think. That we've done. And
I will say part of our strategy in doing this is we have had a lot. I have some fans from my solo stuff that I had done, and Chris had some, obviously some fans from his solo stuff and all the things that he's done. So I think our strategy in doing it was like, okay, everyone's like has a question mark over their head. What is this new band that they're a part of? Like, some people were maybe a little suspicious. Some people were maybe a little skeptical. Some people were just intrigued, So I think we just wanted to answer that question mark, or at least I did, be like, okay, for those of you who want to know what this new project is, come to this event at this time and we will show you. And so I think it was a really good way for us as previous solo artists to come together as a duo and be like, this is what you get if you hire the Vintage Yell, or if you come out to a Vintage Yell show. This is what it's going to be like. And I think that really kind of showed people what this was going to be.
We definitely had some musicians in the back of the room, arms folded, looking like, okay, let's see what you got, and so it was like
pen and paper, taking, scoring us 1 to 10,
our phone in hand, ready to, post something like, they ain't all that,
Yeah.
but no, it was fun. It was good. So the pressure was on to do well, but really the main thing also with this band is it's, our goal, our focus has been live, to be a live working band.
Touring. Yeah.
Touring, traveling. So just about everything we do, even the record, the songs, I mean, it really, there's a pretty short path that you can connect back to the live show with just about every decision we make and action we take, because it was really important for us to get that going as soon as possible, and for it to be at the level that we wanted it to be, that we hoped it could be. And so I think that's also helped too, because we didn't want to be a band that just wrote and made records in our bedroom and then just kind of put it out and just maybe played a show every now and then and then we're just happy to stay in town. It was like, no, we want this to be real. So that's also guided most of what we do.
Where did you do the launch gig?
We did again in Arlington, a place called the Black Box, which
Okay.
is it's a venue, but it's like a semi-private venue. And that's what we wanted for that, because, like Jesse was saying, we could control everything, because, we went there like, several days before and just checked stuff out. And then I went through the whole PA and was like, yeah, that's cool, but we're going to, I'm going to zero all this out and start from scratch. I think it could be cooler. And so just did a bunch of stuff like that. And there was no way you could do that at just a open to the public venue or a bar or whatever, to be able to have everything be just the way you want it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We technically, we rented that venue, actually.
Yeah.
We rented a venue to do it.
Yeah.
I've written a couple of things based on listener survey interest, and one of them has been about, getting better gigs, and something I hadn't thought a lot about until recently when I was just kind of doing research and asking people was renting a venue to do basically what you did. And looking at it as an investment in yourself. I certainly had looked at, and still do look at, like creating gigs where they don't normally exist, to get out there and have places to play and do some maybe somewhat similar things. But I think it sounds like it was a great idea, and it sounds like it worked out really well. You had done some prior gigs together, right, as a duo?
Very
Yes,
little.
we had.
Yeah.
Our first gig together was, I think, like March 24th, because I remember it was the same day as our release of our first single.
Yeah.
So we
Okay.
had a few gigs, but people were still like kind of billing us as Chris Raspante and Jesse Spradlin. It's like they couldn't grasp the concept of a band name.
Sure.
And so we still hadn't fully like established us as a band, but we had a few like sprinkled duo gigs. I don't know if we had a band. We may have had one band gig at the guitar show before that, because I think we played the guitar show in April.
Oh yeah.
So we had a few, but it was definitely not a lot.
But like by design, I think we played together maybe once or twice, like acoustic duo, and we were doing your material.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think we did maybe a couple more, after we decided to be a band, and where we were actually playing our own stuff before we started doing band stuff. But by design, the first couple of shows like that, it was like kind of, under the radar, off the beaten path type places, except for the guitar show in Dallas, which that was pretty big. But we knew this year was going to be, a lot of a building year, and a lot of like, these first couple shows are probably not going to be great, or they're probably, we're going to look
working
back
out the kinks.
And so it's like, but that's great. That's the only way to do it, is to do it. You can't. It's hard to rehearse
perform it. Yeah, you can't skip that step.
It's hard to rehearse a great show. You have to just go out there and just see what works and what doesn't, and what people like and what they don't, and you just find that out doing shows. So the only thing you can do is like, well, then maybe the first couple of months of doing shows, let's maybe not book ourselves in something that's going to be
too much attention.
We or like detrimental if we just bomb,
Yeah.
So that's kind of also what we did as well, that I think worked out. And so by the time we did get to the guitar show and get to some of these others, and then that free show, we at least had enough under our belt that we felt comfortable.
Yeah.
And so when you look back, the one that we didn't do that I wish we could have, but we just could not pull it off. We didn't have like pro video at that one show that we did, because it was just, there was so much going on. It was the last thing to think about. I was like,
Yeah,
just can't pull it off. But there's a lot of fan shot stuff from that show. And so looking back, it was like, yeah, that was a pretty good show. Like I'm happy with that. There's nothing I like cringe, you know. So yeah, that was kind of that's what we tried to do.
And when you mention the word of mouth marketing, were there many things that you did offline that contributed to the word of mouth, and like something specific that you remember, or something that you tried that was offline?
I think, well, we created like a flyer that we could text someone like with all of the information. And I mean, I just like texted it to every person that I thought would be interested, any like music contacts I had, any photographers I knew, booking people we knew. We just texted it to people, like, our personal contacts, or even some people who worked for some music organizations here. We made sure that they had the information. I think we did a local podcast, and advertised it, and had the podcast advertise it for us. So a lot of it was personally letting people know about the event. I mean, but what about you, Chris?
In this day and age, I mean, I guess a lot doesn't happen that's not online. You know, we spend a lot of time just like either in person, one-on-one, like brainstorming and planning stuff, and thinking about stuff. And then we also phone calls, just speakerphone. I mean, everything from set lists to gigs coming up to promo stuff to
wardrobe,
what we need to do. Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
just everything, everything you could think of. I tell people we put about a year's worth of work into a couple of months, I think, as far as just trying to get the band off the ground and just doing all the stuff that you need to do, creating a YouTube page and getting all your other social stuff going on. And it was a lot of work. There was the first couple months. I mean, I'd say, Jesse probably came over to my house because, the studio's here. And so we tend to, headquarter over here a lot. She would come over 3-4 times in 1 week, because there was just so much to do, and again, it was like that probably overambitious goal of like trying to get something done by a certain, date. And so I was like, okay, if we're going to have this done by next week, then it's going to take this many hours to get done. And we would just do it. So there's definitely been a lot of that. But yeah, probably promo and letting people know about stuff. I mean, there's just so much you can do, with your phone and just online, to just reach people so quickly. But yeah, there's still quite a bit of just calling, texting, emailing people. Just
I think promoting it at shows too. I mean, like we did have some people that, from our just little low key shows that we did, that we would just let everybody know about the event that we had coming up. And, just, I think Can of When was after that. But we did advertise on the podcast. So we used all the resources that we had and tried to do the best we could with what we had.
Oh, another thing we've done is it's an organization called So Far Sound.
I know of them, yeah. Mm-hmm.
We've done a few of those shows now, and it's been really cool. I mean, it's a very like, it's low pay. It's basically you're just doing it for the love of doing it. But so if to the listeners out there, if they don't know, it's basically like it's an organization that puts on shows all over the country and world, I guess. Mm-hmm. But they kind of specify, they have usually them in whatever town you're in, and they're like little secret shows that pop up. They'll have them at just locations that a lot of times weren't supposed to be a live venue, but for tonight they are, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And they'll put you with like, so it'll usually be you and 2 other artists, so 3 artists total. It's always original. Most time it's not going to be a full band because it's kind of a smaller deal, But the people that show up to these, it's a paid event. The audience pays ahead of time to go to these shows. They don't know where they're going to be until like a day before. They don't know who they're going to see, but they're very much like, super music fans. We've done those because, the people that show up to those, if they like you, like afterwards they come up and talk with you, and they're going to sign up and follow you from that point on,
become long-term fans.
Yeah. So like we've made fans at some of those shows where there was maybe 30 people that were there total, 30 40 people in the audience, and next thing you know, the next several shows you do as a full band, even if it's like way far away from where that show was, all of a sudden you've got all those people there and just happy to be there. And so that's been a really cool, I'd say, way to build a fan base and kind of get the word out.
I'm really happy to hear that your experience was good, and that the So Far thing is still around. I had a guy on here from like So Far, Kansas or something, and I realized in talking about it again that was just one locale. It wasn't like a corporate guy or anything like that. I don't really know how they're structured, but it sounds like when you go in with the right expectations and you look at it as a fan supporter building exercise.
Yeah, like
that's absolutely.
Yeah, like I think because it basically, it really is going to change, like as far as who is hosting, and who's putting it on, because that changes, and also obviously, the town that you're in, that's going to make a big difference. But the sound is always different. You never know. Sometimes it could be a pretty cool little PA. Other times not,
Sometimes it's completely unplugged and there's no PA.
Yeah. This last time we did it basically in this like little shop in downtown Dallas, or close to downtown. And we got there and I was just kind of looking over what they had. And I told Jesse, I said, you know what? We're going to, like, after seeing what they've got, we are going to just play completely acoustic. And I mean, like, we're going to hold our guitars and sing and play with no mics, no nothing. And she was like, really? I said, yeah. I said, watch, it's going to, because the room was kind of like this, pretty reflective kind of live sounding room, kind of a long, narrow. And
they didn't really have room for 2 vocal inputs and 2 guitar inputs. I guess,
that kind of thing.
So it was like,
but so we did it. And the cool thing was like, and actually the 2 acts before us did plug in and play. So we went from that to us, and we walked up and was, I mean, like, just with our, with your voice said, hey, everybody, we're going to do something kind of old school here. So, just hang with us. And it was really cool. Like, the whole room got quiet and they just listened. And we just kind of like wandered around in this kind of little circle, space, and played and sang. And it was one of the cooler shows I think we've done. And it was all just, the level that you could play your guitar and sing, unamplified. And again, like, we had people at the end of it like, that was really cool and blah, 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 and, start following us. So I think that's kind of the stuff you have to do, or you just got to be ready to roll with stuff and just kind of take a situation and make the best out of it. And a lot of times that can turn into a cooler situation than it was going to be in the first place.
Yeah. And I think when you can make like a personalized experience for your fans in like such a unique, like intimate environment like that, that's like a show to us. But to the people who came, like, that's like a whole experience for them, and a whole night that they came out and paid money to, tickets for a show. And, they're going to remember that experience. And so it's worked for us so far, just building little pockets of fans from those So Far shows.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. And that sounds like it was a great call that day. And it sounds like it made it really fun. Okay. Just a few more questions and we'll wrap up here, but
hey, we got nothing but time.
That's all we have, right? Let's see here. What is the number one? Actually, let me ask you individually, and then if one of you wants to rebut or follow up, that's fine. But so,
we'll duke it
Jesse, how about we'll start with you?
Okay.
What are you guys learning most about right now?
Oh, what am I learning most about?
Sure.
Is probably sound equipment.
You mean like life in general, or?
I think with this band, like I said before, Chris, I was full on like me and an acoustic guitar. There'd be some times where I could get a band together and really, express my songs in a, more full way with a band. But I think what I'm learning more is like just the performance side of things when it comes to like performing with a band and, everything that involves, like as far as little things such as like what's the most inconspicuous way to like switch guitars in between songs, to feeling out if we need to skip a certain song on our set list to make the show go on, to building transitions for our live show, and logistical things, and what it means to not just play a song in front of people, but really perform and give someone like a concert experience. At the end of the day, it's supposed to be entertainment. And even if something sounds beautiful, if it's not entertaining for someone to watch, they, may not be as likely to want to enjoy that experience again. So I think that having a little courage in the performance aspect of things, because it's a little bit of a jump to be a singer and a songwriter, to be like, okay, now I'm going to be like full on like rock star with like a Telecaster in my hand and, distortion on my guitar, and kind of just embracing that and not shying away from it, and trying to find what my, genuine artist inner self is like in that context. Because I think for me as a singer songwriter, there's so many, like my musical personality is so fluid, because I'm not one genre necessarily as a songwriter. It can fluctuate. So I think we're just figuring out, for me, like that's something that I'm growing in and learning about, in addition to just learning more every day what our brand identity is as the Vintage Yell, and trying to, emulate what that is from a genuine place. Because just as an artist, like I can't do anything just because it's like what we're supposed to be doing. I have to like really believe in what we're doing and really like relate to it, and has to come from like an authentic place. So I think that's something that I'm growing in. Christopher.
Well, I have a different question. I have a different question for you, Chris.
Oh, okay.
Unless you feel compelled to add.
You've already learned everything you need to learn, Chris.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, that was a very insightful answer. So I think we probably both learned. Chris, what's the number one challenge for the band right now?
Oh man, I think it's the typical, like, we always refer to it as the new band blues, where you're trying to introduce yourselves to, an audience, to the world, just getting people to know you, probably getting a booking agent, when you're trying to start out. That's pretty challenging when you haven't done a whole lot yet. I would say it's a lot of that stuff. Just, the typical, we are new, we haven't done a whole lot, but we want to, and there's no other way to get there except to just do it. And so it's just trying to create opportunities with different shows, with opening up for people. And we had a really good opportunity recently. We went down to College Station and opened up for Whiskey Myers. So that was cool. They're a relatively big band, start off in Texas, and now I think they're, actually just kind of nationwide. Yes, I'd say that is just trying to, build your fan base and just get known, and
social media too.
Yeah, and get booked. Because the music, surprisingly, that part of it wasn't the biggest, problem as far as like writing the songs and recording them, all that. I mean, it was a lot of work. Don't get me wrong. And we put a lot of work into it, but I would say that wasn't the most challenging thing. I think probably what tends to be the most challenging is, okay, you've got the record done. Now it's just like, the starter pistol is going off and the race is really starting now as far as all the stuff you got to get done. It's definitely different than being in a cover band.
Sure.
All you musicians out there that are listening, that have been in cover bands for years. I mean, that's definitely got its own set of challenges and skill set. But it's amazing how different, trying to be an original artist and being in a band where you're just relying on your songs. I know I'm giving you a super long answer, but that's how my mind rambles. Another thing we've experienced as far as a challenge is like coming up with a set list and a show that's strictly just based on songs that you've written. Like where you look at your show and you go, okay, we can only pull from this pile of songs. You can, maybe take the easy way out and go, okay, we're going to throw this cover in, to kind of bail ourselves out. But, we really don't do that. We do a couple of covers in a show, but we're doing like them our own way. And we're doing it, because we want to do a different spin on them. So we're not relying on like just crowd pleasers to throw out there to just, get the crowd back, on our side. So that's been a real challenge, I think, is like going, you know what, we've got a lot of songs that are in this key, or we've got a lot of songs that are this tempo, and we could use a song that's like this. At that point, it's like, well, better get to writing.
Yeah.
But it's cool. I mean, that it kind of helps lead you down a path, because it's like, you know what? Yeah, we need to write something just kind of fun, or we need to write something that's maybe in this key or this, again, it goes back to for us, it's really very live driven. And so we tend to look at it. I tend to look at it from like, that looking at your set list and going, okay, where are the strengths and where are the weaknesses? Okay, here's the weaknesses. Let's figure out what we need to do to fix that.
Nice. All right, I have one left field question for each of you. So let's start with you, Jesse.
Okay, ladies first.
Do you believe in yourself more than you believed 5 years ago?
That's a great question.
Isn't it?
Artists are too...
He's like, it is, isn't it?
He's like, artists are way too insecure to answer that question. Yeah. I would say I shockingly have come farther than I thought I would from 5 years ago. And so I think that, I think that me personally, the last 3 years, I'm sure a lot of musicians have this experience with COVID. It's kind of like someone, put a blindfold over me and spun me around like I was about to hit a piñata. And then I took the blindfold off and the piñata was gone. And I'm like, where am I? So I think that a little bit of like insecurity lays there because of, the last 3 years are kind of like, have been a weird situation for musicians. So I think that I feel like I have a good support system. Maybe I should believe in myself a little more than I do. But I think that also in the past 3 years, I got married. So my husband is a huge strength and advocate for me to believe in myself. So having him in my life probably encourages me a lot more. And I do think that, working with a partner like Chris, you can kind of, we can be very honest with each other in like areas that we're like, hey, you did this during the show. I think that it'd be better if we did this. And like, taking, constructive criticism, but we're also, I think, good at, calming the other one's insecurities and like, no, that looks great. Oh, no, that was really cool. Don't read too much into it. So I think that, I think maybe yes, but also I'm not sure. So I hope so. I probably should. And we definitely have come along a long way just in this year. So
I believe in you more than I did 5 years ago.
Yeah, I believe in you more too than I did 5 years ago. So I'm turning red as you're asking this question. So I guess the answer is I probably do believe in myself a little bit more. And at the same exact time, have a little more doubt than I did 5 years ago. So I think there's coexisting emotions, and the proof is in the pudding. So I think that we've proven that maybe we should believe in ourselves, because we've been doing pretty good this year.
Well, it was a simple yes/no question, but I'm just kidding. Good job. Good job.
I'm more complicated than that.
No, I love that. Thanks for sharing that. That's good vulnerability there. All right, Chris, here's yours. Where do you...
yes or no, Chris?
Oh, okay. Yeah.
No, yours is more complicated. I would have done this the other way around had I thought about it.
Oh no. Okay,
No.
I promise I'll make it short.
All right, somebody set a timer. Just kidding. All right, where, Chris, do you find the most meaning in life?
Oh man. Damn you for that question.
59, 58.
Yeah, no
57.
kidding. What? Okay, ask me that again.
Where do you find the most meaning in life?
Oh. That's a really good and tough question. Well, could that also be like, where do you find the most happiness? Is that kind of
Sure.
Same? He's like, just answer the question.
What does it mean to you, Chris?
I mean, well, it's, it's family, it's music, it's, feeling like you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, like you're on the right path. I do feel like this band is definitely what I'm supposed to be doing. There's been times where you feel like, man, because, neither one of us are in our 20s anymore. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
Don't tell my secrets, Chris.
Yeah. No, Jesse's, young as a daisy. But, so there's times where you're like, oh man, I wish I'd, done that. We all do, where it's like, wish you'd been doing this, sooner or earlier or whatever. But I think a lot of stuff just happens when it happens. And I really believe that with this band and working with Jesse and all the stuff that, we've been doing and have done, I think, yeah, when you're just, when you just feel like truly happy with what you're doing and kind of the direction you're going, and you feel like everyone else around you is enjoying it as well and are happy for you, I think that's when you can kind of maybe get, where you find the most meaning in life, or where it feels the most meaningful. And hopefully that, the music you're making is making other people happy and glad that you're doing it. So I hope that's a good answer.
And doggies and coffee.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I've got 2 dogs, as opposed to kids, so that they are always, in the picture. I mean, really sitting on the deck, listening to something that you did that you feel really proud of, and you're like, man, we actually did it. And, your significant other is there and your dogs are there and you've probably got a cocktail in your hand. And, it's like, okay, this is pretty cool. Like, take a snapshot. This is a pretty cool moment right here.
That's beautiful. I like it. Well, I almost forgot to mention this, but since we're apparently all coffee nerds, I wanted to tell you guys, and I'm going to send you this in case you're as big a nerd as I am, but I ran across an episode, it's a new one, of the Tim Ferriss Show, a podcast, where he actually had another podcaster do an episode on his show instead of the normal Tim Ferriss thing. I don't know if you listened to him, but there's a guy named Mark Plotkin who did an episode on coffee, the world's most famous stimulant. It was about the chemistry and history and more. It was really, really good. I'm going to send it to you, and hopefully you'll enjoy it as much as I did. And then lastly,
Jesse is the coffee aficionado of our whole group, so
you'll probably like it then. Yeah,
she is now about 6 inches off the ground now.
I'm very excited.
With anticipation.
And enthusiast is an understatement. We had a coffee themed wedding.
Nice.
I mean, it's a lot. It's aggressive.
Yeah, I like it. All right, so Goin On Swinging was the first single released, and I know that people can keep up with you, probably hear some of your music, check out all your socials at thevintageyell.com. Can you tell me the name of the next single for people to look for?
Yeah, I believe it's gonna be Wrong Direction.
Yes, I'm excited.
Yeah, that will probably be. We're gonna let the holidays. Here's another tip for all you crazy kids out there. It's probably best not to try to release stuff during the whole holiday season because of all the hubbub going on. Even though everything is done now musically, we're going to wait until, January after the new year to get through all that. And so we can start releasing stuff, with kind of a very clear open runway ahead of us. So, yeah, so somewhere in the teens of January, I believe, will be the first single. And yeah, that'll be Wrong Direction. And then about 4 to 6 weeks after that will be the next one, which should be a song called Time of Death. All I could say is to everybody out there who've just been listening or all they've had is the first song since March. So just bear with us. I promise you, just new stuff is coming. And thanks for staying this long just based on that one song.
The world is hanging in the balance of your next.
Yeah, but yeah, you can go to our YouTube channel and you can hear, live versions of stuff that will be released in the future.
It's great sounding stuff. I'm looking forward to hearing the rest of what you sent me, and I look forward to your releases. Wish you all the best, and we should do this again sometime.
Definitely.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
So nice to meet you.
Yeah, the pleasure was mine, and I do get down to Arlington and Fort Worth from time to time, so hopefully we'll get to see you two in person next time. And yeah, it's been a great pleasure. Thanks for being great guests.
Thank you.
This episode was powered by Podcast Startup. If you feel you need a little help with that podcast you're contemplating, Podcast Startup may be just the thing for you. Podcast Startup is a program designed for new podcasters. Did you know that most podcasts don't make it past their first few episodes? That's right. They start, they stall, and then they die. Sustaining a podcast ain't easy. It's commitment. A lack of planning and misaligned expectations are a recipe for fast burnout and fade out for podcasters. This is exactly the kind of thing that Podcast Startup was designed to help you with. If you're intrigued, if you want to start a podcast the right way, go to unstarvingmusician.com/podcast startup to learn more and to receive free podcast startup tips from yours truly. Thank you for listening. You can leave us feedback, questions, comments, complaints at unstarvingmusician.com/feedback. If you enjoyed this podcast, please follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. If you love this podcast, please visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor to learn about the many ways of showing your love and support. Your support does indeed equal love. The series music you heard in this episode is New Gods Part 2 by yours truly. Find links for all the places to hear the full version with vocals by yours truly at rabonzo.com. If you do not yet have a website for your music, check out Bandzoogle. It was created to help musicians and bands build their website and manage direct-to-fan marketing and sales. Bandzoogle has amazing design options, a commission-free store to sell music, merch, tickets, and more, plus tools that can capture detailed fan data for you. Try it at bandzoogle.com. Use the promo code RABONZO, that's ROBONZO, to get 15% off your first year. Find links for all the people and things talked about in this episode at unstarvingmusician.com. Peace, love, and a whole lot of gratitude.